Now, in today's big story, Nigeria's security challenges have continued to test the limits of the country's policing system, from banditry to kidnapping and, of course, commercial violence. Many communities say the current structures of centralized policing is struggling to respond quickly enough. This is why the conversation around state police has returned to the national stage. A committee reviewing the framework of state policing has resumed its work, but the idea remains controversial. Supporters say it could bring security closer to communities, while critics fear political misuse by state government.
So, to help us examine whether state police is truly the solution to Nigeria's insecurity, we are joined by Tony Ofoyetan. That's Dr. Tony Ofoyetan, and he's the Director General of the International Institute of Professional Securities, and also Dr. Steve Okwori, Security Consultant. Gentlemen, you are welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's good to have you here. Now,
thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Grant.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Ofoyetan, I'm going to come to you first. I was wondering, from a professional security standpoint, if you could let us know, is Nigeria's centralized policing structure still effective for the current threats that we're experiencing?
Once again, thank you for having me. I think that question has its own answer inherent in it. The mere fact that we are already advocating for state policing, and that the federal government here had been inundated with the cry and the agitation for state policing, speaks volume about whether the central policing system is effective enough to curb the avalanche of security challenges we have in the country today. And my answer, of course, is to the extent that state policing is long overdue, especially in view of the torrential terrorism, kidnapping, and avalanche of crimes and criminalities, especially in our suburbs, especially in the outskirts, in the villages, where the numerical strength of the Nigerian police, as we speak, understandably may not be able to get there. And unfortunately, painfully too, because of the underutilization of technology, which of course would have also aided. Today, as we speak now, we have a policing force that is less than 500,000, policing about 250 million human beings. You and I know that is a lot of a challenge. More so, most of the states in the country have already started their own state policing system. The difference as we speak is basically because the law has not allowed them to bear arms, and that is why they are not bearing arms. In Lagos State, you have a lot of them, those that they designate for traffic and transportation management, like the LASMA, the neighborhood Peace Corps is also there, Neighborhood Watch rather is there, Sokoto Marshal is there, Ebubeagu is there. You know, each of these states all over the country, they all have their paramilitary or parasecurity apparatus as we speak today. And they are paying them, they are funding them. The only difference is just to up their training and of course introduce arms into it. And that automatically becomes a state policing thing. So for me, I think that, yes, please.
Now, Dr. Steve Okwori, critics fear that governors could misuse state police against political opponents. How valid is this concern?
Well, the question is whether the governors would abuse or not abuse. Yes. I think the truth is that the creation of state policing has nothing to do with governors' abuse of it. Because as we speak today, if the governor wants the listening ear of the IGP and say, I want 10 policemen, I want to assure you that the IGP most likely will tilt towards their request, except on the condition that maybe that governor or that state is not in good terms with the presidency, or alternatively is not in good terms with the CP. For me, whatever abuse we may think of, modernity, technology is already down within those Today you have a situation where almost everybody carries camera around through the instrumentality of the phone they are holding. And you would have seen also that police brutality has reduced drastically because of that. So if you are talking about police brutality and all those stuff like that, is there any government that
Yeah, but Dr. Ofoyetan, it's really not about whether police brutality has reduced. It's that when you engage with state policing, the police now comes under the state government. And that means that there are possibilities and risks that they could be taken advantage of. They could be used as apparatus by the governors for whatever reason, especially when it comes to political opposition. So that there is a present fear, and that's been one of the factors people have been pointing toward and saying that this might also not be a great idea at the end of the day. If you have a system where, as it stands now, the police is used as advantage for political parties or big men, then imagine the kind of animal we'll be unleashing when it's a state jurisdiction, if you get what I mean. So do you think that fear is not valid?
I think from the perspective of percentage, the overall good of the state and the overall good of the nation. You are talking about probability. Now the question is whether legislations should be based on probability. And if you look at the probability vis-a-vis criticality, now you want to ask yourself, which most likely is better? Are we talking about the criticality of establishing a state policing or the probability of not establishing a state policing because we believe that the governor will use it against its political enemy? Now the question now is, let us assume without conceding that that most likely may happen. Now, we're operating on the premise of probability. What is the percentage of these perceived political enemies we are talking about vis-a-vis the overall citizenry of each of the states or of the nation at large? You are talking of a police to the extent of being able to police, effective policing, to reduce crime, eradicate certain crimes. There are certain crimes in Nigeria that must be eradicated, and the eradication is possible. And there are those that have to be reduced. So when you are talking about using the excuse that it may be a political tool, it may be a tool against political adversaries and all those stuff like that, for me, I still think that in contemporary society, it's most likely a lazy man's argument. In view of the fact that we have higher level of security challenges, the higher level of people dying on daily basis, villages are being sacked, people are being maimed.
So let's talk about that. Let's now that you've brought that in, let's talk about capacity. You've just mentioned villages being sacked. Now, amongst the crimes that are happening inside of Nigeria that one would say that the police should be on top of would be banditry in the north, insurgency in the northeast, farmer herder conflicts in the middle belt, kidnappings on highways, and also urban crimes, cult violence in the south. So the big question now is, should we actually be looking at restructuring the police or creating or giving it more capacity? Is the Nigerian police force equipped enough to actually handle these crimes that we just stated here? Let's take a look at banditry in the north, for instance. Do we think that the Nigerian police are capable of handling these situations? Mostly we always bring in the military, the armed forces in these cases. So how will state policing help here?
Okay, let's look at it from the fact that, we're talking about capacity. To me, the police is not short of capacity. It's not short of the intellectual acumen to be able to also face head-on the challenge of banditry, terrorism, and the like. But you look at it from the perspective of the numerical strength and the resources that is at hand. The government, to what extent has the government been able to fund? Let us assume that all the resources going to the Army, to the Navy, to the Air Force for the joint operation is going straight and directly to the police. Do you think that the result will be the same? The answer, of course, is not. But you are talking of a limited resources shared among Avalanche and many security agencies and the like. Why? Because the central government is actually the main financier of all the security agencies and the like. But when you departmentalize it to the extent that each state has it as its own main responsibility, and of course, I'm sure that the result will be different. Don't forget that when you talk about this capacity of the police have been able to do excellently well in and out of the country, especially outside the country. You would have seen their capacity severally. But you are talking of a country where you have more ungoverned spaces, because of a lot of factors are actually major contributor to the ineffectiveness of the police activities when it comes to fight against banditry and all those stuff like that. There's the challenge of the culture, there's the challenge of the language, there's the challenge of topography, there's the challenge of even the climate, So all these things are things that the state policing on its own would attend to naturally. Because when you are talking about state policing, it simply means that you are domiciled within your own territory. You understand the language there, you understand the culture there, you understand the topography, you understand you know the streams, you know the God they worship, you know places to go, you know places not to go. You are most likely able to identify foreigners or strangers when they enter your vicinity, and you become accountable to your people, even when you misbehave as a police officer. They can identify you, they know where you stay, they know your parents, they know your genealogy. So at that point in time, there are a lot of things that, interwoven together to make it a robust thing. Once we are able to have a template that is going to start on a good and professional ground, for me, it's not a matter of whether the police is capable. They are quite capable. But events and circumstances now has shifted from the issue of having a central policing system. It is extremely overwhelming. Their numerical strength is not capable of doing that. Their financial resources is not capable of doing that. And of course, like I said, the other factors we talk about, culture and all those stuff like that, are major inhibiting factors. So if we've had state policing, and you now have a governor is not going to go to the federal government to begin to beg cap in hand to say that the state should be protected and wait for federal government to order the IGP to deploy policemen like we have in cases like Benue State and Plateau State and all those stuff, where they have to wait for the federal government or the IGP to deploy men. They have to beg and all those stuff. Because you as a governor, you become answerable directly to your people, especially all right, when Doctor. It comes to security.
All right, Dr.
Yes.
Ofoyetan, thank you. Let's reintroduce Dr. Steve Okwori, who's rejoined us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Dr. Steve, I beg to differ with regards to the capabilities, but I think that's a question that will come into before we let you go, should we have the time. Would state police truly improve response time and intelligence gatherings at the community levels? Dr. Steve?
Oh. Once again, his network has undone us. Hopefully, we might be able to get him. But
you can't hear me.
No,
we can hear you.
Now we can. Now we can. Go ahead now.
Okay. Sorry about the network from Abuja. I don't know what's happening to it.
Okay.
I think with regards to the state police creation and establishment, my Oga there, Dr. Ofoyetan, has said a lot. I was listening to him vision here. State police, I think the whole idea about state police is to see that we have presence of security in our communities. And of course, you agree with me that most of these violent attacks happen in our very remote communities where we don't have security presence. And that is why the perpetrators or these criminals usually have their field day when they go to attack innocent Nigerians, either in their sleep or going about their lawful businesses. The whole idea about it is that let us have presence of security in our rural communities. But my worry here is the implementation. We come up with a lot of policies and all that, but implementing it and sustaining these policies is an area where you are talking about state police. How well will they be equipped? Because if they are not equipped with arms and ammunition, they cannot confront these criminals when they come to attack our people, right? They will not be effective, and you will see a whole lot of inefficiency, and they will not be able to see how to carry out the whole idea, the essence why they are being established. Now, Nigerian police, the federal police, is about 96 years old. We are still being confronted with lack of funds, lack of training, lack of technology, lack of enough manpower and all that. These are challenges that the federal government itself cannot even address. We're talking about state police. How many states are viable enough to be able to help address these issues? Because if they are not armed, if they are not well trained, if they don't use technology to be able to track the movement of these criminal elements from one location to another, surveillance equipment to know where they are, when they carry out these acts of criminality, then the whole essence is defeated, right? So going forward, let us see that a whole lot is on the template. I am aware that the IGP has constituted a committee, right, to look into the establishment of state police. But I think that we are putting the cart before the horse, because we need to look at the constitutional availability, how and where we can be able to address these issues. When you look at section 214 of our constitution, that section needs to be amended to be able to accommodate the creation or establishment of state police. So I think that we would have gone ahead to see what the National Assembly will do in that regard before we get to talk about a committee, right, that has to do with the implementation of state police. You see, we're talking about state police here, and the IG has constituted a committee, all made up of retired CPs and ACPs and all that, right? So we're talking about, I think that the IGP should have gone beyond that scope, right? Involves private security consultants, critical stakeholders in that committee. It's not a police affair committee looking at it. It is supposed to be an all-encompassing critical stakeholders in that committee.
Dr. Okwori,
what I've said is that let us first of all address the issue, looking at the constitution. Once that is done, then we can begin to talk about implementation.
All right, now, Dr. Okwori, a very interesting input there that you did, and I liked it because it's bringing me to this question now. Is the Nigerian police actually ready to be decentralized when it comes to, we've talked about capacity, when it comes to ability, when it comes to training? And whose responsibility would it be when it becomes state policing? Would it be the responsibility of the states to now train the Nigerian police? Because there's so much about the Nigerian police out there that's adverse. People do not trust the Nigerian police, yet this is the same police that we're about to, well, decentralize and send to states. Do we need to retrain? What kind of processes would the recruiting process be? What do we need to take a look at first? Like you said, perhaps it's the cart before the horse. But what needs to be done exactly? What definitively needs to be done before we now start engaging state police? Dr. Okwori.
We have to look at the Constitution, Section 214. My Oga Tony Ofoyetan is a lawyer. He knows that section that I'm talking about. We must see how to tinker with that section. We must see how to, first of all, amend that section, right? And that is why you see Mr. President, each time he has or he finds himself in a forum with other governors or National Assembly members, he kept emphasizing about creation of state police because he knows that the National Assembly, first of all, needs to amend that constitution. That is one. Now, before that, this has to do with states, right? So the committee set up by the IGP, I don't think they have any critical role to play at this point in time, right? How many governors are going to be the financiers of state police in their various states, right? They are the ones that will pay, they are the ones that will train, they are the ones that will buy arms and ammunition, they are the ones.
All right, Dr. Okwori, we're finding it difficult to hear you.
Of insecurity remotely.
Dr. Okwori, we're finding it difficult to hear you. We're going to advise that you shut off your visuals or video and let's manage with just the audio. I think it will be clearer then, and then you can continue, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we have lost him there. But let's come back to Dr. Ofoyetan. And the same question here, is Nigerian police disciplined enough to be decentralized at this point, or does it require further training, and whose responsibility would that be?
I think the first thing is to first of all decentralize the policing system. Like the president has also expressed. The issue of training, it's a product of many things. One, the security need of each locality will be identified. The funding would also be highly instrumental. The infrastructure, then you now talk about the training. The training, there's nothing special about training when it comes to repolicing training, because you are talking about, there are different aspects of the training. It's not just the physical drill, the warfare or counter-terrorism drills and all those stuff like that. You also have, the academic part of it or the professional part of it, which is basically done in the classroom, talking about human rights abuses, the position of the law and all those stuff like that. We are not short of trainers in this country at all. At whatever level, we are not short of trainers. And the main thing is to what extent will they be equipped is a product of the funding that is available to them. But what I know very well is that each state that is serious about it will definitely have its own internal mechanism to be able to up its game, to be able to train its personnel at every professional level and each category. The first thing is that we then don't forget that whatever the state policing system we are talking about, it's not going to erode the federal policing system, except for the fact that you now have jurisdiction being identified. There are domestic crimes that will be left for the state police. There are crimes that, for example, like the inter-border, border-related crimes, custom-related crimes, and all those stuff like that. Even terrorism at certain level, or financial crimes that has to do with government currencies and the like. They will all still be domiciled with the state police. So it's not with the federal police. Sorry. It's not as if everything, when you talk about state policing, that every aspect of security is now going to be transferred to the state police. No, not at all. We are talking basically of issues that have to do with community crime. We are talking of issues that has to do with domesticated crime within each locality. It becomes easier for, it becomes easier for, what do you call it now, response timing become very fast. When it comes to decision making, the commissioner of police or the director of policing in that state become directly answerable. He just has one structure, and that is the structure of the governor to call for approval, and that's all. It's not going to move from the governor to the AIG to the DIG before getting to the IG and all those stuff like that. That structure would have automatically collapsed, and that will help response timing. Then, of course, you are not talking of a situation where security becomes competitive among states. Because when you see that Lagos State is doing very well, you are seeing the innovation that is coming from Lagos, that is coming from Delta, that is coming maybe from Kano, that is coming from maybe from River State and all those stuff like that. As a governor, you also want to, key into some of those innovations. You also want to bring out your own innovation. At the end of the day, security becomes positively competitive. So it's not, to me, as far as I'm concerned, the advantages for now outweighs the disadvantages. But I agree with Steve on one thing, and I think that I will crave the indulgence of the IGP to revisit the constitution of the police committee. The police committee should actually, for me, as far as I'm concerned, should be predominantly professionals that are outside the policing system. Now, because what happened in most regimented systems is this. If I'm a police officer and the IG asks me to be part of a committee, I am most likely going to be extremely careful about what I'm going to recommend. I want to first of all understand the psychology of my IG. I want to know where he tilts towards, so that my recommendation will align with his expectation. And that is not the best of all. And that, unfortunately, is what happened in regimented services, whether it is military, whether it is police, army, navy, NSCDC, and the like. You cannot go at variance with the expectation of your boss. But if you have core professionals, they would give you a professional template, global professional template. They will identify the merit and the demerit of each of the policies and each of the structures that are placed on ground before you. Now that makes it easier for you to present a robust presentation before Mr. President. at the end of the day. But when you are now done it exclusively as a police affair, this is not a police affair. It's a federal government affair. In actual fact, it is an affair that affects the citizenry, the civilians, much more than the police. So I want to crave the indulgence of our new IGP, Olatunji Disu, to look at the constitution of that committee again and bring in professionals from all over the country. Look at people you know that have cut their teeth in the industry and bring them. They may not be more than 3, 4, or 5, depending on his discretion. And it costs the police next to nothing to do that. Rather, it's an advantage because you are going to be seeing people that are going to be thinking outside the box. But the committee that we have now is most likely going to be thinking and formulating policy within the box.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, it's quite clear. Thank you so much for your insight, and Mr. Steve as well, who we lost earlier. Security is ultimately about trust, a trust that when danger appears, the system designed to protect citizens will show up equipped and adequately intact. Thank you so much for your time and your insight on that.